Hello again, nerds. Thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is the Week in Nerdom, your place for daily nerd news videos. Today being Tuesday, we are talking about TV news. This week in TV news, we've got Titans Season 2, Twilight Zone, The Stand, and some stuff to review as well, so let's hit that intro real quick. First on the list for TV news, we have Titans Season 2. That hashtag show is reporting that they have already begun casting for not only Slade Wilson, but his daughter Rose Wilson, who, if you do not know, Slade is Deathstroke and his daughter is Ravager in the comic books, which is boding very well for Season 2 because Deathstroke is a major Batman and Titans villain, and just a major thorn in the side of all that is good in the DC universe. So that is, yeah, I am signing up for Season 2 for sure. Next, we're talking about the Twilight Zone. TV Line is reporting that Jordan Peele's reboot series is going to be premiering on April 1st. That's April Fool's Day on the CBS All Access app. No real news beyond that, just really fun to be keeping tabs on this. Next, keeping in the CBS All Access vein, we are talking about The Stand. The Stand has been picked up by CBS for their All Access app. For those that don't know, The Stand is probably one of the most famous Stephen King stories ever. There was I believe it was a miniseries made for television years ago. That was not the greatest, but is still very memorable. So this is being adapted by Josh Boone and Ben Cavell, who Josh Boone did Fault in Our Stars and Ben Cavell did SEAL Team. They were both writers for those movies. They're writing this live-action adaptation, and Boone is going to be directing at least the first few episodes, very potentially the entire 10-episode series that CBS has picked up. Next, we're talking a little bit of renewals, mostly CW renewals, but there's a Netflix one I'm throwing in at the end, so listen up very, very closely. We have Supernatural getting renewed for a 15th season, Arrow for its 8th season, Supergirl and Legends of Tomorrow, both for their 5th seasons, Flash for its 6th season, Black Lightning for its 3rd season, Riverdale for season 4, and Jessica Jones on Netflix is getting picked up for a 3rd season. Very strange, very, very strange, considering every other series, except for The Punisher even. So maybe there is hope for a 3rd season of The Punisher, like we were talking about last week. That could be pretty amazing, but I'm really not holding out any kind of hope. And then our last bit of news this week for TV, guys, is Crisis on Infinite Earths. The Arrowverse, the Berlantiverse, as Kevin Smith is wont to call it, is doing Crisis on Infinite Earths as their next major crossover event. And CEO Mark Pedowitz was talking to the TV Critics Association press tour. Man, that's a lot of words to say at once. He was saying that they are planning on this being the biggest crossover that they have ever done, and they're going to be taking large swings, quote unquote. What that means, we really have no idea, but it is one of the biggest comic book events in DC history as well, so that could mean a lot of things. Also, his comments made it sound like once this event is done, that the CW multiverse is going to be smaller somehow. So perhaps this is going to be the official kickstart into Batwoman, the Batwoman series that we've been talking about, in that she's from a different dimension, and then, or a different universe or whatever, and then her universe gets crushed somehow, and so she has to be in the Berlanti Arrowverse. That's just me hypothesizing. There's nothing saying that is going to be how it goes. But that is all we have for news this week, so let's jump into the reviews. Before we move into the reviews, though, guys, I have to remind you about the Patreon. Patreon.com/generallynerdy. That is the place to go to get all of your extra nerdy bits. There are 5 tiers. You can jump on for just $1 a month is the lowest tier, and that dollar gets you early access to almost all of the videos and a monthly Discord where we talk about the upcoming previews issues for comic books. Again, that's patreon.com/generallynerdy. 5 tiers. The higher you go up, the more stuff you get. Everything from what I just listed to a second Q&A Discord session every month. And then all the way up to producer credits on every episode that I produce. So go check it out, patreon.com/generallynerdy. And now, let's review some stuff. And this week for reviews, I'm only reviewing one thing. We're talking about the second half premiere of the 14th season of Supernatural, aka episode 11. Next week we will be doing Hannah. I have not been able to watch it just yet, but I do want to at least talk about the first episode, possibly the whole series, depends on how much time I have on my hands between now and then. But Supernatural, episode 11, season 14, is a very interesting conundrum of an episode because it both it both expands the mythology, but then also is not a solid solo episode. So it's both great and slightly disappointing all at the same time. So we get the basic synopsis is we find Dean as we left him at the end of the first half of the season with Michael locked in his head, and Death, the new Death, who has been kind of helping out the Winchesters for the last 2 or 3 seasons, has told him that all of the books in her library, I think is what she called it, all of the books that deal with him specifically, with his death, they all end the same, except for one. And we didn't know exactly what that meant until this episode. Now, Dean doesn't know exactly what to do with that information, so he goes on a farewell tour, as Sam so eloquently puts it. And he goes to see Sheriff Donna and says goodbye to her, and their whole interaction felt kind of forced. It was really weird. It felt out of place, which is not normal with these two characters because they're both longtime characters of the show. Obviously, Dean is who the show's freaking about, but Sheriff Donna has been there for a few seasons at this point. Just their conversation, they had to mention the Wayward Sisters characters because, the showrunners are still grumpy that didn't get picked up, but just like I understand the purpose was to bring her into the story because she definitely comes back later and it pays off, but there's a lot that could have been done better here, and I feel like one of the things that kind of bugs me about this series in its later iterations is some of the weird directorial choices. There's a lot of handheld shots that really shouldn't be handheld, and that's a little distracting because of the camera shake. But that's really just a preference thing. Anyway, so back to the synopsis of the episode. So he says goodbye to Sheriff Donna, even though she doesn't know it's goodbye, and then he goes and sees his mom. He's told Sam that's where he's headed. Sam thinks there's something up, so he calls Mom. Mom's looking out because she also feels like something might be up, but she also thinks that she can get it out of Dean. Dean gets there, talks her into going into town to get some supplies so she can make Winchester Surprise, which was apparently his favorite meal from childhood that she would make before she died. Yes, it's very soap opera, I feel like, but whatever. So she goes into town, and where the hell is town? It takes her forever to get there and forever to get back. Just enough time for Dean to build this very interesting cage. Or that's what it looks like up until Mom gets back. They have their dinner, they go to sleep, and she gets suspicious and goes out and checks the garage to see what he has actually built. It is not, in fact, a cage, but a coffin with some very interesting markings on it. And while she's out there, we run into the subplot. And the subplot is Nick. He has been the subplot this entire season. Ever since, if you remember, he was the host for Lucifer. Lucifer has died, so now Nick has gone a little crazy trying to figure out who killed his family and why. And that has brought him to Mary Winchester, because apparently Mary Winchester killed, or knew at least, the demon that killed his family. Mary was unable to kill the demon, so she locked him in a box, much like the puzzle box that you see in the Hellraiser movies. And so now our two stories converge. It really, like, I'm rushing through this, but the third act of this episode felt equally as rushed as what I'm saying right now. So I feel like that kind of marked against it as well. But we do get to see some world building around Mary Winchester, which is pretty cool. I really dig when we get that from Mary or John. Back when we were only getting John mythology, that was some of the highlights of the earlier seasons. We are about to get more John Winchester, because I believe episode 300 is either this week or next week. So there's going to be a cameo from everyone's favorite John Winchester from The Walking Dead. That's right, Jeffrey Dean Morgan is coming back for episode 300, but we've talked about that in the news a couple weeks ago. Anyway, the demon, they trap the demon. Nick talks to the demon, tries to figure out, why did you kill my family? Because it's a freaking demon, and that's what they do. It's very contrived, this explanation for why Nick is doing the things he's doing, and I feel like that also kind of marked against it. But that kind of brings us to our ratings for this episode. First is the general score. This is a mythology building episode. They're kind of trying to make it a monster of the week episode. That doesn't really convey as well as it once did a few seasons ago, when they would still visit this style episode every here and there. I don't feel like they can do anything other than mythology building episodes, but that's okay. That's not marking against them. I just feel like they weren't certain of which direction they were going, so that brought this score down a little bit. We're looking at an 85 out of 100. The direction felt a little wonky, and again, the directorial choices of handheld versus tripod shot. A lot of these shots should have been steady, should have been on a tripod, at the very least should have been on a steady cam, not it was like at one point when they're in the warehouse towards the end of the episode, it's freaking distracting, enough to take you out of the episode. So only briefly, but still 85 out of 100. Next is the season rating. How does this fit into the season? And I feel like this services the season more than it services itself. And really it services the overall mythology more than anything. So I feel like that's a little backwards. It should be self-contained and then serve the season and then serve the greater mythology. And like I said, it kind of got that in the wrong direction. So we're looking at a 72 out of 100 for that reason. Our last objective rubric is the story rating, and this, because it's weak as a self-contained episode, that really has marked against it. We get resolution in the third act in literally 2 minutes. These are hour-long episodes that feels like there's entirely too much going on, that it's keeping individual issues from being self-sustaining entities, and a good series can service both the issue and the series itself, and this episode didn't really pull that off. So we're looking at a 70 out of 100 for the story in this single episode. And then our final rubric is the enjoyability. Completely subjective. Was this a good episode? This was... I'm going to say this frequently, so get used to it. But if I like a thing, the mediocre version of that thing, I still really like. And this being a fairly mediocre episode of a series I really like, that helps it a little bit. But the biggest thing was we got the glimpse into Mary Winchester's past. We got the glimpse into the interactions. She knew Nick before Nick was Lucifer, which was a really cool little element, so I really dug that. We're looking at an 88 out of 100 just because these episodes, they're hitting their stride, or that's kind of not the best way to put it for a show that's in its 14th season. More like they know their strengths and they play to them. Sometimes they overestimate their strengths, and we talked about that in the story and in the series ratings, but 315 out of 400 is still a pretty solid score. Definitely this season is not disappointing, just that's at times not quite super fulfilling either. But that is where today's episode ends, guys. Thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. What did I miss? What should we talk about next time? What should I review next time? Let me know in the comments down below. If, though, you want to go deeper into the conversation, then you can jump over to the website, generallynerdy.net. That is a place to go get the freebies, all of the social media links, and the general store, so you can pick up your nerdy swag. General store tab right across the top. Put up some new shirts pretty recently. Going to be putting up some more here in the not too distant future, but keep checking back at generallynerdy.net for all of the future updates. If this is your first time at Generally Nerdy, then please don't hesitate to click that subscribe button. If you like this episode, then you can click the like button. If you didn't, there's a dislike button. You can click that too. If you are falling behind in your nerd news and you want to catch up, then you can click or tap the box right there to the left of my face to do that. But before we go and do all of the clicking and visiting the websites and all of the stuff, guys, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.